The next question comes all the way from Nairobi, Kenya, from a pastor by the name of Samuel. And Samuel, by the way, I've been in Kenya many times. The last time I was there on my way to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I love the country of Kenya, and I'm happy to answer your question. I am a pastor who does deliverance. I have a case of a woman who manifests with the personality of her great-grandfather who hinders her. What do I do? You know, Samuel, it's interesting you ask this kind of question because Africans, generally speaking, are more open to this sort of thing than people in the Western world. You've experienced something that I've encountered on countless occasions, and I've actually come up with a term to describe it. I call it ancestral generational dissociation. I have written about this in our books on curse breaking and also in my book, Jezebel. Now, in those books, I give a detailed explanation. In our International School of Exorcism, I give an even more elaborate explanation. And I would encourage you to get those two books particularly, and also to enroll in our International School of Exorcism. Because if you're doing deliverance, and particularly if you're doing deliverance in Africa, you're going to find this happening many, many times. And the more you understand it, the more you're going to find it because you will know to look for it. There's new research into genomes and the way that genetics plays a way in our DNA of passing on not just physical characteristics, but psychological characteristics, emotional characteristics. There's recent research of Holocaust survivors that has discovered successive generations inherit the emotional components of fear and terror and deprivation. Is it possible that our DNA does more than determine the shape of our nose or the color of our eyes? I believe so. Back to that term. Now, I can only give you a brief explanation here. That's why I'm suggesting you get the books and enroll in our School of Exorcism. But essentially, this is how it works. It's ancestral. It's an identity from the past. It's generational. That identity, as a memory imprint genetically, goes generation to generation to generation. And it's dissociative. Now let's talk about multiple personalities and dissociation as it takes place in this life. We know from psychology and from deliverance that when people have severe trauma, they can sometimes dissociate or fragment, or parts of the soul split off into a separate identity, often an identity with individuated characteristics and even an individual name. And that identity then carries the memory and all the hurt and the pain, the fear, the shame, the terror associated with the trauma. But it's a distinctly separate part of the person. Now, if something like this happens transgenerationally in the past, then that identity, which was formed then, just as a multiple personality identity is formed now, becomes a separate reality of the consciousness. And it is possible. This is what we've discovered over many hundreds and hundreds of case studies, that dissociated identity of the past, in this case, the great-grandfather, who may have been evil, might have been a witch doctor, might have wanted to do something evil or had something evil done to him, that identity then becomes genetically imprinted and passes down through successive states of consciousness and successive generations. It can be accessed to the extent, as you have indicated, that you can speak to it, that you can even reason with it, that you can bring psychological redemption to it. Now, if you watch our YouTube channel, you will see me deal with individual cases like this where I'm talking to the person and suddenly I'm talking to an ancestor from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I just recently dealt with a case of a man we discovered had an ancestral identity going back 150 years to Civil War times in America, and he'd committed a murder. Now, the gentleman living in the present knew nothing about this murder. All he knew was that as a wonderful, fine husband, Christian, and father, he would fly into violent rages from time to time and have murderous thoughts, which was not at all like him. So what you've run into, Pastor, is something that we've dealt with on many occasions, and I'm glad you asked the question so you can begin to explore this possibility. You see, here in these dissociated alter identity states from the past, passed on to the present, are the keys to getting the person free in some instances. So, for example, bringing emotional, spiritual, and psychological redemption and resolution to that fragmented, inherited soul part can relieve the legal right that a demon invading the soul now is hanging on to torment the person. Please consult our further resources and continue on this path. I commend you for being a man of God, willing to step out in the ministry of deliverance and confront the force of darkness. And I pray that God will bless you mightily as you step forward in faith into a future in this ministry. The most frequent demon that I deal with is the spirit of Jezebel, the most prevalent evil spirit of our age. This demon wants to destroy your health, your finances, your marriage, your family, and your church. Learn the tactics of Jezebel throughout history and in the time in which we live. My book, Jezebel, Defeating Your Number One Spiritual Enemy, is your key to overcoming this demon, which is more prevalent than at any time in human history. Get your copy today. Jezebel, Defeating Your Number One Spiritual Enemy.
He took the curses away from me. Was he Bob Larson? Because he can help you.
If your life isn't all that it should be, if relationships aren't working, if your health, your finances, or your spiritual life are unhappy, schedule a personal one-on-one encounter with me. We'll get to the root of the issues that are holding you back. We'll give you answers and a whole new direction in life.
Oh, what a change, what a difference when you have an encounter with God.
Take action. I look forward to seeing you soon.
We encourage your support for this worldwide outreach to do what Jesus did. For the latest information on resources, seminars, conferences, training institutes, retreats, and international missions, go to boblarson.org. Thank you for your prayers and financial partnership.